No military commander in recorded history has ever done what he did. Over 100 battles, across 3 empires, against Byzantine armies, Persian armies, Arab tribal confederations, Roman-trained professional soldiers. He never lost, not once, not a single battle. In a career that spanned over 2 decades of continuous warfare. His name was Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, and he was called by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Saifullah, the sword of God. This is his story. Khalid ibn al-Walid was born around 585 AD in Mecca. He came from the Banu Makhzum, one of the most powerful and warrior clans of the Quraysh tribe. His father, al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, was a wealthy leader known across Arabia. From childhood, Khalid was trained in the arts of war, horsemanship, swordsmanship, the tactics of desert cavalry. He was not educated at an academy. There were no military schools in 6th century Arabia. He learned war by doing it, by watching, by thinking. And very early his peers recognized that he thought about battle differently than anyone else. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, began his mission in 610 AD, Khalid was among his opponents. Not from hatred, but from tribal loyalty and the old ways of Mecca. His clan, the Banu Makhzum, were among the strongest opponents of the new faith. And in the year 625 AD, at the Battle of Uhud, Khalid proved just how dangerous he was. The Muslim army had nearly won the battle. Their archers had held the high ground perfectly. Then, in what historians call one of the great tactical interventions of ancient warfare, Khalid led a cavalry charge around the Muslim flank. The archers abandoned their position. The Muslim army was caught from behind. It was the only battle the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ever nearly lost. The man responsible was Khalid ibn al-Walid. For 3 years after Uhud, Khalid watched. He watched the Muslim community survive, grow, strengthen. He watched the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in 628 AD, where the Muslims negotiated from a position of surprising strength. And something changed in him. The historical accounts say Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, had long wrestled with doubts about his opposition to Muhammad, peace be upon him. In 627 AD, he refused to fight at the Battle of the Trench. He could not bring himself to attack the Muslims directly. In 629 AD, he made his decision. He rode to Medina. He declared his faith. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, whose army Khalid had nearly destroyed 4 years earlier, welcomed him and gave him a title that no military commander before or since has been given by a prophet. Saifullah min Suyufillah, a sword from among the swords of God. Khalid had been a Muslim for less than a year when his first great test came. In September 629 AD, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sent an army of 3,000 men north into Byzantine territory. Their mission was to respond to the killing of a Muslim envoy by a Byzantine-allied Arab tribe. What they found there was not a tribal force. It was a Byzantine army of over 100,000 soldiers. The Muslim commanders, Zayd ibn Haritha, may Allah be pleased with him, Jafar ibn Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, and Abdullah ibn Rawaha, may Allah be pleased with him, fell one by one. 3 commanders, 3 deaths, in rapid succession. The Muslim army was on the verge of collapse. Then the soldiers passed the command to Khalid ibn al-Walid. He had been a Muslim for less than 12 months. What Khalid did next is still studied in military colleges today. He could not win this battle. The numbers were simply impossible. so he did not try to win it. He chose to survive it with honor. He reorganized the Muslim army overnight, moved units to different positions, created noise, movement, and dust to simulate a larger force. The Byzantines, uncertain about what they were facing, hesitated. Khalid used that hesitation to conduct an orderly withdrawal. 3,000 Muslim soldiers walked away from a Byzantine army of 100,000, intact, unbroken, bloodied, but not destroyed. Shocking fact. In the entire campaign, Muslim casualties were fewer than the 3 commanders who fell at the start. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he heard the news in Medina, wept for the fallen. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then called Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, by his new title, for the first time publicly. Saifullah. After the Prophet's death in 632 AD, the Arabian Peninsula erupted. Dozens of tribes who had pledged allegiance to Islam declared their independence. They refused to pay zakat, the religious tithe. Some followed false prophets. This crisis was called the Ridda Wars, the Wars of Apostasy. Caliph Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, the Prophet's closest companion and first successor, faced an impossible situation. The Muslim state was barely 2 years old, and it was already falling apart from within. Caliph Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, gave Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, a single mission: reunite Arabia by any means necessary. The decisive battle of the Ridda Wars came at Akraba in December 632 AD. Against the army of Musaylima, the most dangerous rebel leader, who commanded over 40,000 fighters. The battle began badly. Muslim forces were pushed back twice. The fighting moved into a walled garden, what historians later called the Garden of Death. Hand to hand, wall to wall, for hours, Khalid's forces won, but the cost was enormous. Over 1,200 Muslims died at Akraba, including many who had memorized the entire Quran. Their loss was so devastating that it accelerated the decision to compile the Quran into a single written text. Shocking fact. The Battle of Akraba directly caused the compilation of the Quran as we know it today. With Arabia reunited under one banner, Caliph Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, sent Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, north, into Iraq. The Sassanid Persian Empire controlled all of modern Iraq, the ancient land of Mesopotamia. It was one of the greatest civilizations in history, heir to Babylon, heir to Cyrus the Great. In 633 AD, Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, began his Iraqi campaign with fewer than 18,000 soldiers against an empire of millions. What followed was one of the most remarkable military sequences in history. In the space of just 18 months, Khalid fought and won over a dozen major engagements in Iraq. The Battle of Chains, where Persian forces literally chained themselves together to prevent retreat, Khalid broke them anyway. The Battle of the River, fought partially in water, partially on land. Khalid adapted his tactics within the battle itself. The Battle of Walaja, where Khalid used a double envelopment maneuver, a tactic so advanced it would later be called the Kanai of Islamic military history. Shocking fact. The Walaja maneuver Khalid used in 633 AD is the same fundamental tactic Hannibal used at Cannae in 216 BC, and that the Allies used at the Falaise Gap in 1944. The same strategic idea, separated by 2,500 years, battle after battle, win after win. The Persian Empire was being dismantled from the south. In 634 AD, everything changed. News reached Khalid in Iraq. The Muslim forces in Syria were in serious trouble. 3 Muslim armies in Syria were facing the full Byzantine military response. They were close to breaking. Khalid made a decision that defied logic. He would take his best cavalry, approximately 9,000 men, and march from Iraq to Syria, across the Syrian desert, in summer, over 500 miles, in 18 days. His guides told him the central route was impossible. No water for days, scorching heat, disorienting terrain. Khalid gave his horses water mixed with a special preparation before the journey, then marched them without stopping. When he emerged from the desert in Syria, the Byzantine commanders couldn't believe what they were seeing. The army that had been fighting in Iraq had just appeared behind them. From 634 to 636 AD, Khalid commanded Muslim forces across Syria. He fought and won at Busra, at Ajnadain, at Fal, at Damascus. In each battle, he adapted. He never fought the same battle twice. Against the heavily armored Byzantine infantry, he used mobility. Against Byzantine cavalry, he used terrain. Against fortified cities, he used patience and psychological pressure. City after city in Syria fell, not always through force. Khalid's reputation had preceded him. Many cities opened their gates. Because fighting Khalid ibn al-Walid, the armies of the ancient world had learned, was a battle you were not going to win. Everything Khalid had learned, every campaign, every tactic, every innovation, it all came together in August 636 AD, at the Battle of Yarmouk. We have covered Yarmouk in detail in our previous documentary, but in the story of Khalid ibn al-Walid, it deserves its place here. Against a Byzantine army estimated at over 100,000 soldiers, Khalid organized 40,000 Muslim fighters into the most sophisticated tactical formation Arab warfare had ever seen. 36 mobile cavalry units as a flexible reserve, deliberate terrain selection to neutralize the Byzantine numerical advantage, 6 days of disciplined holding action. Then, on the 6th day, the perfect exploitation of a sandstorm. The Byzantine army in Syria ceased to exist as a fighting force. It was the greatest tactical achievement of Khalid's career, and it was the last battle he ever commanded. During the Battle of Yarmouk, while the fighting was still happening, a messenger arrived for Khalid. Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, who had taken over after Abu Bakr's, may Allah be pleased with him, death, had removed Khalid from command, effective immediately. His replacement was Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, may Allah be pleased with him, a deeply respected companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The reasons historians give vary. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, had long been cautious about Khalid's growing reputation. Soldiers were beginning to associate victories with Khalid, rather than with God's will. Some sources say Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, feared Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, was becoming too powerful, a potential threat to the caliphate's authority. Others point to a controversial decision Khalid had made years earlier, killing a tribal leader named Malik ibn Nuwayra during the Ridda Wars. Whatever the reason, the order from Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was given. And it was final. When Khalid was told of his removal, in front of his soldiers, he is reported to have said something remarkable. He did not protest. He did not question the caliph's authority. He said, "I fight for God, not for Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him." Then he picked up his sword and went back into battle. as a regular soldier, under another man's command. The battle was won. The greatest military commander of his age, stripped of command during his greatest victory, fought on anyway, without a word of bitterness. Military historians who study leadership, not just tactics, point to this moment as perhaps Khalid's greatest achievement. Not Mu'tah, not Walaja, not Yarmouk, but this: the discipline to serve without the title. After Yarmouk, Khalid ibn al-Walid never commanded an army again. He continued to serve, in smaller capacities, in Syria. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was not cruel to him. He was not imprisoned or exiled. But the great campaigns, the ones that would make history, were given to other men. Khalid watched as Muslim forces conquered Jerusalem in 638 AD. He was not their commander. He watched as Egypt fell in 641 AD. He was not their commander. He had conquered more territory, won more battles, and faced greater odds than any man alive. And he spent his final years watching others receive the glory. Khalid ibn al-Walid died in 642 AD, in Homs, Syria, in his bed. He was approximately 57 years old. He had fought in over 100 battles. He had never been defeated. And he died not on a battlefield, but in a house, of illness, like any ordinary man. The historical accounts say that when he was dying, he showed his companions the wounds on his body. There was no part of his body, he said, that did not carry a scar from a sword or an arrow. And yet, here he was, dying in bed. He reportedly wept, not from fear of death, but because he had expected, hoped, to die on the battlefield. It had not happened, not once, in over 100 battles. The sword of God was sheathed by God's own timing. When Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, the man who had removed Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, from command, heard of his death, he reportedly wept openly. He said, "Women have become barren and will no longer give birth to anyone like Khalid ibn al-Walid, the man who removed him." Weeping at his loss. History is full of complicated relationships. This may be one of the most complicated of all. How do we measure Khalid ibn al-Walid as a military commander? The record is simply unprecedented in world history. Alexander the Great never lost a major battle, but he had the greatest army of his era and fought for 13 years. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of history's greatest commanders, lost repeatedly in the final years. Hannibal Barca, brilliant tactician, ultimately defeated. Khalid ibn al-Walid, over 100 battles, 0 defeats. In every type of terrain, against every type of enemy, with forces typically smaller than his opponents. Even military historians who are not Muslim, who have no religious connection to his story, consistently rank him among the 5 greatest military commanders who ever lived. But here is what separates Khalid from pure military genius: his character. He was a man who had fought against Islam and then became its greatest defender. He was a man who won victory after victory and then was removed from command. And he accepted that removal, fought on, without complaint. He was a man who never lost a battle, but died in bed, and wept because he hadn't died in the field. The contradiction is beautiful in its complexity. The greatest sword in history, sheathed not by an enemy, but by his own obedience to a caliph he served without question. Shocking fact: no military commander in recorded history has a longer undefeated streak than Khalid ibn al-Walid. Not Alexander, not Caesar, not Napoleon. Shocking fact. In 3 years of Iraqi and Syrian campaigns, Khalid personally commanded forces that defeated both the Sassanid Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire simultaneously. Shocking fact. The Pakistan Military Academy in Kabul teaches Khalid's tactics as part of its core curriculum today. Shocking fact. The double envelopment tactic Khalid used at Walaja in 633 AD is the same pattern used by Allied commanders at the Falaise Gap in Normandy in 1944, over 1,300 years later. Shocking fact. Despite being called the Sword of God, Khalid was removed from command, died in bed, and was never given a state funeral by the Caliph, who admired him.
Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him.
Born in Mecca, trained as a warrior of the old Arabia, the man who nearly destroyed the Muslim army at Uhud, who then became Islam's greatest sword, who crossed 500 miles of impossible desert in 18 days, who never lost a single battle in over 100 engagements against the greatest empires of his age, who was removed from command during his greatest victory, and who fought on anyway. His tomb is in Homs, Syria. His tactics are still taught in military academies from Islamabad to London to Virginia. His title, Saifullah, is still spoken with reverence 14 centuries after it was given. What made him extraordinary was not just his undefeated record. It was the combination, the genius and the discipline, the fire and the obedience. The warrior who could not be beaten, choosing in the end to lay down the sword when asked. If this documentary moved you, please like this video. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Subscribe to War and Military History. Share this with someone who should know this story. We have more coming. Much more. You are watching War and Military History, where every conflict has a cause, every border has a cost, and every war leaves something behind. Subscribe and stay with us, because history is never truly over.